years ago, I was living with my wife and 2 teen boys, and at the time, my twin brother John was living in the shed in the backyard. He had fallen on some hard times after losing his job, so I set him up with a futon and a window AC unit, and I only asked for $200 a month. I myself worked at a computer and phone repair shop. I tried to get John to work with me, but he didn't have any IT or computer repair experience. John struggled to find a job he could stick with. He was a house painter for about a week, a landscaper for just a couple days, and a cashier at a 7-Eleven for nearly a month. Then, he seemed to get a lucky break when he got hired to be a mall Santa in mid-November, about 2 months after moving in with my family. At first, we all made jokes about it, lightly poking fun at the whole idea of a mall Santa, and how weird it was for my kids that their uncle was the guy behind the beer. For my brother, though, it was very serious and uplifting. It seemed like he had finally found himself a new career. Obviously, he couldn't be Santa Claus year-round, but he said he could find plenty of work in children's entertainment by playing all sorts of characters kids might want at their birthday parties and whatnot. I was happy for him. I hated seeing him in that slump. Now my kids would have a better impression of their uncle and could visit him at the mall, fully embracing being the oldest kids to sit on his lap just to bust his chops on the job. Every dinner, we loved hearing about his mall Santa stories and about the strange things kids wished for. Then, one day in early December, John asked me to repair his laptop. He said it had just randomly stopped turning on. I told him I would fix it for free since he was family, but he would have to wait in the queue at my shop. He understood it would take a few days, though I promised I'd do it as quickly as I could. However, it wasn't even 2 days before John showed me just how desperate he was to get his computer back. I woke up one night to him standing over me in a Santa Claus costume, whispering my name.
Matt, wake up.
What's going on, John?
Matt, how much longer before you fix my computer?
I told you, man, it's gonna be a few days. I'll try to get it to you by Friday.
No! Not Friday! Tomorrow! I need it now! I can't go another day without it!
Alright, I'll try to fix it tomorrow. Just let me go. After grabbing me by the collar and nearly pulling me out of the bed just to scream in my face about getting his computer back, he dropped me back down and walked away like he hadn't just terrorized my wife. She woke up during the encounter and started screaming, thinking we were being robbed. I explained to her that it was just John, but that didn't alleviate her concern. After a lengthy conversation, she convinced me that it was time to kick John out. He'd saved plenty of money by then and was ready to get his own place. Disrespecting me in my own bed like that had just accelerated things. The next morning, I let John know that he had 2 weeks to move out and that I'd have his computer back to him at the end of the day, so he could start looking for places. John looked me in the eye and said he didn't care that we didn't want him around. He just wanted his laptop. I left the interaction alone before it got any more negative. I couldn't take someone half-dressed as Santa Claus seriously anyway. I drove to the shop and started working on John's laptop immediately, skipping about 10 other customers. It turned out to be an easy fix. It just needed a new battery, and I had just the right one in stock. I turned on the computer and charged it up, making sure everything was in working order. Then, I got this feeling. I wanted to check what was on his hard drive. I had never, and have never since, looked through someone's personal data. It's a huge violation of several privacy laws, and just plain wrong to do. But with how badly John wanted his computer back, almost like he was fiending for it, there had to be something interesting on it. I started looking through his files, and I can't say exactly what I saw, but I can say there was a lot of it. What I saw was the most despicable footage and imagery of the horrific exploitation of the most innocent people possible. He even had pictures of my own sons, too. I couldn't bring myself to look through all of it, but the main offending file I found was over 200 gigabytes. This was over a decade ago, so especially at that time, that was an insane amount, taking up nearly his entire hard drive. I immediately called my wife to leave the house and to make sure the kids didn't come home from school. I then took John's laptop to the police station and showed it to them, leading to my brother's arrest. He was later sentenced to 8 years in prison. He got out 4 years ago, but I haven't seen him. People sometimes ask me if I ever feel bad for sending my brother to prison, and the answer is always no. He may have been family, but he was a monster. He lived in my house. He ate dinner with my sons. He came into contact with hundreds of young individuals a day during his mall Santa gig. In a context like that, I didn't regret sending him to prison. I just hoped he'd stay there longer, maybe for the rest of his existence. This story was inspired by a disturbing incident regarding a 64-year-old Raleigh man who worked as a mall Santa. He has pleaded guilty to charges of possessing content no one his age should even know. Leander Dewey Jones pled guilty in a federal court. He was originally charged with 12 counts of second-degree exploitation following his arrest last year. However, authorities revealed that Jones, who was employed as a Santa Claus and magician for kids' parties, was discovered owning content he shouldn't have had. Authorities were alerted about the incidents on May 29, 2015, when Jones brought his desktop computer in for a repair to a Raleigh store. While examining the computer's hard drive for viruses and malware, a computer technician located a folder containing the content, according to officials. The technician then alerted the store's owner, who contacted the Raleigh Police Department. An investigation led police and FBI task force to Jones' home on Brentwood Road in Raleigh, where they found numerous files of downloaded images of such things. Prosecutors said during a court appearance last June that the total amount of files crossed the federal threshold. It was later revealed that about 4,000 images were discovered on the computer and external hard drives. About 1,000 more images were found on CDs and floppy disks. Prosecutors said investigators also found a small spy camera that was set up in the bathroom, as well as business cards that showed he advertised himself as a Santa Claus, a magician, and a pirate. A profile on the Triangle Santa Buddies website listed Jones as Santa Lee Jones, and that he joined the organization in 2014. The profile has since been deleted. Jones faces up to 30 years in prison.
I was 22 years old. I had just graduated from college and was finding the job searching process for my career to be harder than expected. To hold me over until I could find a proper occupation, I picked up a job as one of Santa's helper elves at a local mall. For the most part, I liked the job. I knew it would only last for about 2 months, and all the other elves were women too, so we got along well. 5 days out of the week, I went in the morning to help set up. Then in the evening, we closed things down and went home. The job didn't consist of many headaches aside from the occasional crying kid. All I had to do was usher the kids onto Santa's lap, help them down after they made their wishes, press a button on a camera if they wanted a picture, and take payments. However, as time passed, I noticed something that really concerned me. Santa himself, as I will refer to him, had some questionable behavior. The guy gave us the creeps. He once asked us if there was any way we could change our costumes to make them more revealing so we could attract more customers. We all just kind of wrote it off as a joke, but it didn't exactly sit well with us. He also had a tendency to supposedly bump into us accidentally. It was obvious the creep was trying to cop feels or something like that. And what made it more disturbing was how he was able to take advantage of female guests using the Santa Mall gig. He must have had a hand in the hiring process and selected only young women, because it couldn't have been a coincidence that we were all so similar. Despite that, I didn't report him. I was naive and didn't want to come across as vindictive for coming out with a list of 100 little things he did. Also, by the time I really started to get annoyed with it, we only had 2 more weeks before the Santa program was done. Then, one night, in the last week before Christmas, things got out of hand. That last week was very busy. We had some elves call out and leave early because they were getting overwhelmed, but I stuck it out and even stayed later than usual to help clean up the mess. By the time the Santa area closed down, Santa and I were the only ones left on the team. The entire mall was basically empty. We just had a skeleton crew of a few security guards and shop owners with a few stragglers still shopping. I was sweeping the little house when Santa came up and blocked the doorway, cornering me inside.
How's my favorite little elf doing?
You call all of us your favorite.
But you've been working so hard. Now it's time for me to reward you with something hard, like a candy cane.
Whoa, okay, back it up. I'm gonna give you a chance to rethink that and say something else.
You wanna ride Santa's sleigh? I'll let you ring my jingle bells. Jingle bells, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Hey!
I shoved a broom and dustpan at him and forced my way out of the house. He tried to grab my wrist on the way out, but I slapped it off. I started walking as fast as I could toward the break room so I could get my clothes out of my locker and leave. I entered one of the service hallways, and the dim yellow lights and concrete walls made me feel a sense of impending doom. By the time I made it to the break room and got my keys out to unlock it, Santa had entered the service hallway behind me and was making his way towards me. I got the door unlocked and hurried inside, racing over to my locker. I could hear his heavy footsteps approaching as I frantically looked for the little key, opened the locker, grabbed my stuff and went back to the door. I was hoping to slip past him before he caught up, but when I opened the door, he was standing right in front of me. I backed away in fear as he stepped in and closed the door.
There's no getting away this time. I've got something I want to show you.
Suddenly, Santa dropped his pants, exposing his underwear. I reached in my purse for my phone to call the cops, but before I could get it out, Santa ran at me. He toppled me over to the ground and got on top of me, hitting me against the floor as I fought back with everything I had. I kicked and screamed and managed to get the freak off of me. Then I got up and sprinted down the service hallway and re-entered the main corridor of the mall. When I found a security guard and told him about the ordeal, I was stumbling over my words because of the panic. The police were called and later arrested him. He was taken away in a cruiser and charged accordingly. I've never been able to not think about him attacking me whenever I see anything Santa related. I always wondered what could have happened if I had not fought him off of me. Things would have most definitely gone to the worst case scenario. If you or any other woman you know are facing harassment, don't let it slide. It can get ugly at any moment. This story was inspired by a disturbing Santa incident regarding a man who worked as a mall Santa Claus in Connecticut. He has been arrested for allegedly grabbing a female co-worker and revealing himself to her in a break room. Officers from the Milford Police Department responded to the Connecticut Post Mall at around 7:30 p.m. on a report of a possible attack. An investigation uncovered a 45-year-old man named Prince Carter, who was working as a mall Santa at the time, was accused of grabbing and revealing himself to a female colleague in the employee's break room at the shopping center on Boston Post Road. Carter was arrested in Bridgeport later that night. The 45-year-old man was booked into the local jail on a $25,000 bond and was scheduled to appear in court on Tuesday. A spokesperson for the Connecticut Post Mall said, Carter has been banned from the property in the wake of his arrest. This happened a few weeks before Christmas. I went to the mall with my parents and some other relatives, hoping to find gifts for my husband who wasn't with us at the time. When we got there, we noticed a huge line surrounding the Santa Claus set. My little cousins who were with us begged us to see Santa, so after we did a bit of shopping, we got in line to appease them. We planned to all get in the photo together. However, the closer I got to the front of the line, the more I noticed that something was off about the mall Santa. He was creepy as shit. The way his sunken eyes looked gave me chills. It was weird as hell because the guy kept giving me eye contact. He was supposed to be paying attention to the kids, but he kept staring at me for a few seconds before looking away. My little cousins went up and sat on his lap to make their wishes first. Then, we all got on the platform to take the picture together. We gathered around the Santa, and I ended up right next to his chair. But before the picture was taken, he looked up at me and whispered,
"Why don't you get on Santa's lap?"
No thanks.
We then all posed for the photo. A woman who I assumed to be Miss Claus was behind the camera, and she looked just as weird as Santa. She didn't have a beard though, so I could clearly see her creepy smile. I could feel Santa staring at me too, but I refused to look at him. I just wanted to snap the picture and go, but for whatever reason, Miss Claus just couldn't be satisfied with any of the pictures she was taking. So she made us stand there for what must have been a whole minute, taking photo after photo. It was like getting hit with the strobe light. I could tell my relatives were feeling just as awkward about it, but nobody was brave enough to say anything. Then, Miss Claus got in on things.
Something's just not right. None of these pictures are really capturing how beautiful your family is. Maybe the girl in the green should sit on Santa's lap. No thanks.
If you don't sit on my lap, your children are not gonna get any gifts this year.
What? They're not my children.
Come on, it won't hurt. I'm not that excited yet.
You don't have any children. Don't worry, that can always change.
Suddenly, my father grabbed my arm and pulled me away. Everyone went down the platform and walked off without bothering to pay for the photo. Nobody wanted to have a picture with that creep in it. I could tell my aunt and uncle were furious that they had let that mall Santa get anywhere near their children. It was so blatantly creepy that even my little cousins were uncomfortable. We ended up leaving the mall shortly after. The car ride home was very quiet. We didn't want to discuss what had happened. It was obvious everyone was bothered by the mall Santa. I felt very creeped out by the whole situation. I pushed it out of my head for the next few days. I had a bunch of plans for the holidays, and I didn't want one weird thing to ruin everything. Almost a week later, I went out to a small Christmas party my friends were hosting. After the party was done, I called an Uber to head home. It said it would take around 10 minutes to get there, but after only 1 minute, a car pulled up to the curb. I didn't know if this was my Uber or not, but after checking the app, the driver was still a mile away, and this car didn't match the color or anything. It was just a random black SUV when I was supposed to be getting picked up by a Prius. I started to back away, but then the passenger door suddenly opened, and a masked man came running out at me. He grabbed me and tried to pull me into the car as I screamed my head off and tried to fight back. I was almost stuffed halfway into the car when I finally got the chance to jab the man in his eye and push him off of me. He reeled back, screaming in pain as I ran toward the door. I banged on it, begging for help. After a few seconds, I turned back to see if the man was still coming after me, but thankfully, he had gotten back in the car and was driving off. By the time the door opened, my friend took me back in, shut the door, and immediately called the police. I was still in utter shock. The cops were called, and they made their report, but nothing ever came of it. I wasn't able to get the license plate, only that it was a black SUV, and that there was a guy that attacked me and the driver. But for whatever reason, I just knew it had to be the same weird Mr. and Mrs. Claus couple from the mall. Unfortunately, nothing ever became of the incident. I didn't have any evidence to get them arrested. I don't know what they had planned to do to me had I been kidnapped, but based on what that woman said about having kids, I have my sickening suspicions. Till this day, I have panic attacks whenever I see anyone dressed as Santa Claus. I just think that it may have been the same mall Santa, and I hardly ever leave the house out of fear that those people may come back to get me. This story was inspired by a creepy incident regarding a woman on TikTok who was issuing a PSA about mall Santa Clauses after an alleged creepy incident. In a viral TikTok video that has racked up over 1.1 million views, the woman reclaimed a time a family photo with Santa turned sour, where the man would not stop insisting that she sit on his lap. Can we all agree on the fact that the Santa Clauses that you sit on their laps are creepy? The woman asked in the clip. She then went on to describe the encounter that left her feeling unsettled. Apparently, the woman went to her local mall to take a holiday family photo along with her family members. When the crew gathered for the photo, she opted to sit on an empty chair instead of on Santa's lap. That's when she said things got creepy. Santa repeatedly told the young woman to come sit on his lap after she refused. The woman reported that the Santa kept saying, "You can't leave until you sit on my lap." That's when she decided to explicitly tell him that she had absolutely no intention of sitting on his lap. The Santa then reportedly said, "Well, you're not gonna get what you want for Christmas if you don't come sit on my lap." To make the matters worse, a woman dressed as Miss Claus, who the woman believes was the man's wife, got into the mix and also tried to pressure her into sitting on Santa. The whole ordeal made the woman conclude that the mall Santa should be avoided at all costs.